Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by NetSpend. Homegrown in Austin, NetSpend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, NetSpend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the podcast about the future of Austin's technology community. My name is Tom Singer, and I am the CEO at the Austin Technology Council. And every single week here on the ATC podcast, we try to engage with local leaders so that we can hear their stories of success and get their advice on how we can all thrive going into the future. And today, I'm excited to welcome to the show James Beecham. James is the founder and CEO at a local company called ALTR. Hey, James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on. Very excited to be here.
I'm really glad to have James here. I met James about, 6 weeks ago and ended up talking to him about the Austin Technology Council. He came on board as a new board member, and he's full of energy and ideas about Austin, and he's already helping me shake things up with the direction of where we're going to go with ATC. For those of you who don't know James, he is a technologist who also has really good people skills. And he's developed a lot of tech, but he also realized a long time ago that developing relationships was going to be the secret sauce to building a thriving company. So he takes that combination of an engineering brain and that joy of people, and that's why ALTR is growing so fast. And we're going to hear a lot about what the company does in this interview. So, James, you're a native Austinite, aren't you?
I am, yeah. People tell me that it's weird, but it's the one thing I know. So it's not weird, I guess.
It is weird, although you're of the age group where we're starting to see more and more native Austinites who are taking leadership positions. But, several years ago, there wasn't jobs for people to, if you go back 20, 30 years, there weren't jobs for people to stay here after high school and college. Now, of course, we're this vibrant community. So there's lots of things that can lure people to stay and come back after college. So let's talk about that. You grew up in Austin. How exposed were you to the tech community of 20 and 30 years ago?
I think one of the things that I've been fortunate to have in my life is I found technology, and maybe engineering just generally at a very early age. I'm the product of two IBMers. And, even though I was born here in Austin, IBM for me stands for I've been moved. And I generally think that that's kind of where some of this maybe social aspect of my life we're talking about, in the introduction, which, by the way, was great. Thank you very much for that, Tom. The other way that I've always said it is I used to write a lot of code and now I just talk about it. But, moving around those young, I think I did 4 or 5 elementary schools before 3rd or 4th grade, something like that. Finally landing back in Austin, finishing up at Doss Elementary, go Owls, it just exposed me to kind of technology early on, both from the IBM side with my folks, but then coming back to Austin, just seeing, Dell and IBM and the research labs and kind of all that stuff that was going on when I was really growing up, and realizing that, Austin is a place where there's a lot of infrastructure technology. We didn't have the cool, flashy startups, and, every once in a while you'd see a 19-year-old kid in a Ferrari drive by. But for the most part, it was just, really smart engineers making very critical components for real-time and mission-critical systems. And I really like that. I think that's what forced me to go hardware instead of software in college, was I just saw kind of that hardware DNA that Austin really had. And so I've been exposed to it early on. My brother's an engineer. My wife's an engineer. So it's either a really fun Thanksgiving, dinner conversation if you like that stuff, or you can't wait to leave.
So my future son-in-law, my daughter's getting married in a month. My future son-in-law is one of the smartest mathematicians of his generation, and he loves to think about problem solving. I mean, he's at his core, he's a problem solver, but he's quiet. He's a thinker. He's an engineer. He's a computer scientist. And my family is a bunch of big party Irish talkers, storytellers. And the first time he ever came with my daughter to a big Christmas dinner with all my brothers, we were staying at an Airbnb in San Francisco, and we got back to the Airbnb and my daughter was like, "Oh my God, we were at Uncle Steve's house for 5 hours. I can't even believe that. It felt like it was 2 hours." And Thomas goes, Oh no, it seemed like 5 hours. So
yeah, it was definitely 5 hours. Yeah.
so he would probably rather go to Thanksgiving dinner at your house than at my house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how people can be so different. There's always are you an introvert or you're an extrovert? Do you get energy when you learn that you're going to be with people, or does it make you feel tired? And it probably isn't that binary, but it's amazing, especially being kind of the engineering world. I see both sides, of it in there. And so I'm sure it felt like more than 5 hours for him, actually.
So after you graduated college, where did you go and what led you to founding a company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I, initially did not really set out, to go on the entrepreneurship side. Just kind of happened. Out of school, I did all my internships and co-ops with IBM, here in Austin, again, with my folks being there. And I got to see what a big company was like. And more importantly, I got to learn that I did not like the big company nature. I was at IBM when Power 6 or Power 7 microprocessor came out, and IBM killed Sun, and IBM splashed and got us pizza, to celebrate that chip launch and that there. But did kind of something risky, turned down all the offers going into senior year. All of my friends were like, "You're an idiot. You have to go to the career fair now, and you did all that work to get these full-time offers, before you go into your senior year. What are you thinking?" And I said, "I just don't want to be at IBM. I want to go do something else." So I get to the career fair in December, and walking around, and at this table, I see at the time my arch rival in school, Eric Iberg. If you're out there, Eric, I still think about you. And Eric was a friend. We were involved in IEEE at the university together. But Eric was smart, and Eric worked hard, and Eric did not go to football games on the weekend, but I did. And so I was always a day behind Eric in there, and I could never find the time to make it up, because when we would win, this is back when Texas used to win.
Oh yeah.
Football.
We remember those days. Yeah. Those were good days.
Yeah. After a win, I didn't want to go to the library and study. I wanted to celebrate the win. And so anyways, Eric was always challenging me in school. And I see him sitting there at this table for this weird small company called Texas Memory Systems. And I was like, "So this is where you win, Eric," and was talking with them, and he was kind of razzing me like, "Yeah, you wouldn't want to come here, blah, blah, blah." Like, "Yeah, I want to come here, and I'm going to become your boss." And so, call it ego, call it competitive, call it just wanting to stick around Eric because he's a smart guy. So I took an interview with Texas Memory Systems. It was a small company based out of Houston. The founder, Holly Frost, was a longtime Texas Instruments guy, and we were making very high-speed flash-based storage devices for a number of use cases. Funny thing, 3 months later, IBM acquired that company. And so I ended up working for IBM anyways. But that's kind of what began, right out of school, was wanting to go to a small company, which was the opposite of what I saw at IBM, wanting to be at a very hardware-specific company. We were doing, 1 million reads and writes per second back in 2012, which was a lot. And we had really cool customers. Can't talk about all of them, but the problems that we were solving were just engineeringly were very challenging. That really drew me to that. IBM comes in. There's a sub story here that you could save for later. But my mom was the acquiring person on the other side, on the IBM side, and she knew that Texas Memory Systems was going to get acquired by IBM when I showed her my offer letter, and she didn't say anything. So her fiduciary obligation to shareholders was maintained. And so after IBM came in, they started IBMifying it. And, my manager got 2 managers and, just started having all these weird meetings. My mom got an office in Houston for some reason. And, she would find herself on the engineering floor asking me, "Where's the conference room?" I'm like, "Mom, this is not your floor. This is not your floor. Why are you here?" Really weird, Tom. Everyone's asking, can you ask your mom for a foosball table or a parking spot? I'm like, dude, look around. Like, do you think she's going to tell me or give me anything? Like, I don't think you realize what's going on here. So I had a friend that I did some IBM internships with. We did the Extreme Blue program, which was IBM's fancy internship thing. He was a really smart guy named Will Bittner. He passed away, unfortunately, but smartest engineers that I knew. Joined an options trading platform in Chicago where they were needing hardware engineers to help do hardware accelerated, algorithmic trading things, and kind of keeping in that vein of really hard engineering problems. I mean, super low latency, incredibly high risk if we screw up. For being a 23, 24-year-old guy that was competitive, we already established that. It was a cool thing to go do next. Learned a lot of lessons there. That's probably where some of the entrepreneurial stuff came about, because you would see, one or two people together have an idea about how they think that, a certain stock or option would trade. And then they used us to implement that idea. And when it worked really well. And so it's exciting. That business had an exit. And then myself and a few of the guys there just decided we wanted to solve some of these data security problems that we had while we were there. That was actually our biggest challenge, was how do you secure this data? And that's really what led to us sitting on the couch thinking, if this was hard for us to do, it's got to be hard for other folks as well. And so let's see if maybe there's something here.
And so that led you to founding ALTR. So let's hear the story of ALTR.
Yep. So about 7 years ago, we had this kind of one major problem, and the issue was we couldn't separate the security of data from the operation of data. And what that meant, it really manifested itself when you get down to audits, when you get down to SOC compliance, to PCI compliance. You start getting this kind of chicken and egg problem where you need to defend the data against the admins, the administrators that are there to administer the data, right? And so there's a lot of reasons why somebody would need access to a production database that houses very critical information. They need to make sure that the performance of the database is running correctly. You've got your indexes set right. You've got your accesses set correctly. There's a number of things to do in there, but a lot of times that also comes with access to the data. And so the premise for the business was, how can we separate these two roles? How can the DBAs and the database admins still do their very needed functions, but just not have the entire keys to the data that the business has? And, at this time, 7 years ago, the cliche phrase of, data is the new oil was just starting to be pumped out of the ground. And so it was a very kind of hot topic. Cybersecurity was obviously rising up, but we did not start the business because, there were four of us in a room with a whiteboard trying to figure out how are we going to make a company and become rich. It was genuinely solving a hard problem that we had. And so took that premise of separating operation of data from security of data, kind of mapped out what we thought the solution was. We were dead set on this being a SaaS delivered solution. I remember the first year of doing our pitches to the banks. They're like, you're going to try to secure and control access to my on-premise sensitive data from a SaaS platform. You're an idiot. And, of course, being the much younger and more excited person that I was like, you're wrong. And here's why. And, it took about 7 or 8 or 10 of those bank CISOs basically just beating me up before I came home to my wife one day and was like, shit, maybe I'm wrong, with all this. And, or shoot, sorry, Tom. It was a hard first couple of years. The tech was good. It worked. We kept our head down. Now 5-6 years later, we're winning awards for being SaaS-based data security and data governance. And over 250, businesses that use our solution today. And, we're growing every day. Data is continuing to explode and continuing to be a needed piece there. So, that's our goal. Our goal is to make data usable for businesses, make it easy to get value out of it, because it is very challenging to secure this information, especially in the age of regulation, which is only increasing.
Sure. Well, you bring up a lot of interesting points, but number one, you said, hey, the first 2 years were hard. Customers were pushing back on your plan, saying, we're not buying from you because we don't agree. What advice do you have for people who really think they've got something, who are fighting, who are starting to think, oh, shoot, I might be barking down the wrong path? How do you stick with it? Because obviously you kept going and you've since made it work. ALTR is very successful. How do you work through those first hard years if you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, this is going to sound very basic, but you have to listen. And I think for the first year or so, we were not willing to listen. We kept trying to put square peg into circular hole. And I think if we would have just stopped and listened and analyzed what the folks were saying, it wasn't that just the SaaS delivery was the issue. It was that how do they still maintain some level of control over that data within a SaaS platform? And it kind of clicked in our head when we can utilize the benefit of the cloud for scale, for interoperability, for global reach. But we can still take some of the principles of maybe some of the more traditional security tactics and weave them in and kind of make a hybrid-like approach. So this idea of bring your own key, for encryption, right? So when we would take possession of somebody's data, we used to encrypt it, store it, and tokenize it ourselves. If I would have sooner enabled somebody to control the encryption key, and I just integrated with that solution, we might have knocked down some of these banks a little bit sooner. So I think listening is important. But also remember that, when you, whatever the famous Henry Ford thing was, he asked all the people, what they wanted, and they said they wanted a better horse and buggy, or a lighter weight horse and buggy. So there is certainly an aspect of you need to stick to your guns. And, if you thought about the problem for long enough and you have enough experience in the domain, you're allowed to come up with your own opinions and you're allowed to defend them. So I think it's a combination of listening, knowing what you know, but then also being willing to admit that you don't know certain things and that you might need to change it, and just be flexible. There's all kinds of examples, right, of companies and software and even hardware where the founder or the creator, was so sure they were right, and it just sits on the shelf, and nobody uses it, because at the end of the day, you're solving problems for people. Maybe ChatGPT will change it. Maybe we can start solving problems for ChatGPT and we don't have to sell to people anymore. ChatGPT can start buying stuff for us, but from us. But I think that's what it is. It's listen. It's understand your domain. Really be able to validate why you think what you had was there. For example, for us on SaaS, we'll talk about separating operation of data from security of data. One of the big challenges we had was everything that we bought was an appliance that had to be put in the data center. And so just by definition, it was in the domain of those operating teams. It was in the rack. And so by delivering it via SaaS, that problem got removed, right? There's nothing for these admins to log into. They just kind of administer the platform, and that can be controlled with a number of settings, that existed today. So we knew that we wanted to go SaaS because that solved a big problem, but we needed to listen and learn as to how to actually manifest that into a reality.
So in the last couple of years, call it 4 years, you guys have had a lot of success. You've grown, you've picked up a lot of customers, you broke through that initial first couple of hard years. And with that, you're adding a lot of customers, you're adding a lot of people. What are some of the challenges that you face as CEO of a company that's grown as fast as you have?
Realizing that in engineering school, they don't teach you about people or business at all. We were having a dinner with a doctor. He's a surgeon, and he's out, on his own, doing his own thing. And I asked him, in medical school, did you get any business help at all? Any HR help at all? No, none, zero. So I think that was, coming in woefully unprepared. So UT Engineering, if you're listening and you want more entrepreneurs, think about that, please. I think there's two challenges that I had, and I'll just make this personal about me. The first is most of the time I'm the youngest person that's kind of in the room, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's talking to executives of these large companies. And so realizing that one of two things typically happens when I'm hiring executives, for our company, they either see you as their kid, which for the most part works out well, or they think you're annoying and you're young and you don't know anything, and so all that kind of stuff happens. So I think you just have to embrace that. I had to embrace that, play the role of the kid when that was what I was viewed as. So being genuine, being inquisitive, but also exerting, the authority of, hey, this, I am the CEO here. And so it took a little while to kind of get that confidence. So that's kind of one side of it. I think another side too is everybody's different. And as you look at your different teams, the way that you recruit for engineering is different than how you recruit for the product team, is different than how you recruit for the sales team. When you have your one-on-ones with these team leads, the conversations are different. And so if you try to apply, this is just my lesson, if you try to apply a singular approach or a singular personality, I'm not saying, lie to one group or the other, but just know your audience, and just be able to, when you're recruiting folks or running these teams, understand what they care about and what they want to talk about and kind of what motivates them. The remote work for us has certainly been embraced. I definitely miss going into the office. The folks can't see here, but I'm talking to you from my bedroom / home office here, which is comfortable, but it's not the same. And so, that's a challenge. I'm sure every leader is wondering, where is the line? I know Elon made some controversial statements recently about, it's morally, incorrect to work from home, and people that have to build the roads have to go to work. People have to build the cars in the Tesla factory have to come to work. So why do you in marketing get to stay home? And I don't have an opinion on Elon's opinion. I've learned to not take opinions on Elon's opinion. But that is certainly a challenge of, how do you balance that? So the remote work, I think, is here to stay, but there's some kind of balance to it. It's really hard. People will disappoint you if you give them the chance to disappoint you. But when you find the good ones, you continue to invest in them. You continue to grow through their networks as well. So I think that's a big piece too. This might just be my experience, but and for my recruiter friends out there, I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but we've learned the lesson the hard way that if somebody comes into our business through a recruiter, there's like a 97% chance they're going to leave, through a recruiter. So, you'll get your 14 or 16 good months with them, but then they're going to show up with some offer that, is, I tell them when that happens, I'm like, you should take that. Like, if they're willing to pay you that, and, you've marketed yourself well, and you've used your positive ambiguity, I'm not going to be able to match that. So you should go take that. And so for that reason, we try to really recruit, from known good networks. Again, when you find a good person or a good group of people, invest in them. It's, 5 good people are better than 15 bad, right? Or 15. I think that's what I found.
So you covered a lot of ground there. There's a couple of things I just want to touch on because I don't want people to miss it. Number one, you were talking about you have different types of teams, and they come with different personalities and different job sets. One of the best managers I ever had, I was in sales, and the sales manager treated every salesperson just a little bit differently. I was young. My wife and I liked nice restaurants, but I was like 25 years old. You couldn't afford to go to a fancy steakhouse all the time. So he would challenge me that if I could blow quota away for the month before he'd be visiting Austin, he'd take Sarah and I out to Sullivan's, was the big steakhouse, 25 years ago. He would take us out to Sullivan's, and I would work so hard to blow quota out. And as long as I even got close, he was like, that's close enough. And he'd take us out for dinner. And he created a lot of loyalty because Sarah and I liked doing that. Now, there was another person who worked for him who was a friend of mine in a different state. She was a single mom. She relished a weekday off because that meant that like kids were in school and she could do whatever she needed to do just for herself.
Right, yeah.
So he would tell
actually live her life.
She could go do whatever her hobbies were, whatever. And he told her, he said, if you blow your quota out, you can take a Friday off. We won't tell HR. Because this was in the days where things were a lot stricter, right? I mean, our days off are a little bit more like, just don't abuse it. Back then it was like you had 14 vacation days and you got no more. Yep. And he'd be like, you can take a Friday off or 2 Fridays off. And she would work her butt off to do it. And when she and I compared notes, she could have cared less about a fancy dinner and I could have cared less about a Friday off. So he realized that even though we all had the same job, he found out what motivated us and he talked to us differently. And I always, 25 years later, I always think he was the best boss. Second thing you brought up with this whole idea of remote work. And, my belief is, there's not a right answer. If your company wants to be mostly or fully remote, that's the right answer. If your company wants everyone to come in, that's the right answer. Now you're going to have to find the employees who want to do that. And some may leave if you're one or the other, and I think the answer for many companies is flexibility and hybrid. But like, some companies, they're like, you have to be in 4 days a week. But if you want to go work from Portugal for a week remotely, we're going to let you do it as long as you're getting the job done. And I think we have to live in that world where people are a little more flexible, rather than just cut and dried.
And you're absolutely correct. I think it's going to be here to stay. There's certainly some jobs that require kind of more in person. I think back to my hardware days. I don't have a lab at home. I don't have nearly the footprint needed to have all these scopes and other devices that you needed to do your job there. So there's certainly some pieces in there. And when you talk to people, they say that this remote work, hybrid work was probably the best thing to come out of COVID. I disagree slightly. I think the best thing to come out of COVID was the airlines dropped all their change fees, so they kind of matched how Southwest does it now. And so, thank you, United. It's made me a much more loyal United customer. But then, second after that, it's probably this remote work, hybrid work. I mean, I think we have to be realistic too. Thinking back to the year or two before COVID, every Wednesday I would work from home, maybe something like that. Or, Thursday I'd have somebody coming to the house to do something. So I'd work from home there. So it was kind of, flexible already in that regard. But it's there's certainly a thing to say about work-life balance. And, you mentioned talking to people differently. Some people need the office. I'm certainly one of them. I just recently got an office again just for me because I missed that when I would commute, that was my time to kind of transition from home life, James, to kind of work life, James.
Yep.
And I used that time to think about the day and think about the meetings and what I'm going to say. And, when my commute turned from 10 miles to 10 feet, I lost that. And I actually never found a way to get that back.
Yep. A lot of people tell me that like if they live in a city where they ride the train to work, that 20 minutes on the train allows them to get focused for work or focused for being back with their kids or their husband.
For being back home. Right. Yeah. It really did help a lot. But some folks don't need that. Some folks they can just drop right in and get going. I think the remote work has a lot to do. And talking about maybe Austin here in just a minute, but I saw we're now at number 40, on the best place to live list. And number 1 was Green Bay, Wisconsin. And having been there just a couple of times for football games, you would have to almost certainly be remote work like fully in order to live there and enjoy it. So, it's certainly benefited, folks and places like, Green Bay being the number 1 place to live.
It's interesting because I think there was a time, if you go back 25 years, where we were topping those lists. So, how the world changes. Yeah.
Yeah. How it changes. And you know what? Being born and raised here in Austin, I don't care if we're number 40 or for number 5, number 7. It's always been great. Yeah. And so don't let somebody who's sitting in a newsroom in Denver, Colorado, working for U.S. News and Report tell you that Austin's not great, because it is. It doesn't matter really what they say. And
that's a great transition into, you're a native Austinite. You're building a company here in Austin. What do you think is the state of our Austin tech community now? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And what does the future look like?
I think it's going to be positive overall. One of the things that I always liked about Austin, and I realized this when I moved to Houston. So Texas Memory Systems right out of college was in Houston. And at the time, the Austin downtown was starting to kind of really start to grow. This was 2012. And I thought, I'll live in downtown Houston. That's because the downtown Austin's cool. I'll live in downtown Houston. Not cool, by the way. But what I learned was that Houston didn't have an identity. It was very large. It had very siloed industrial segments. In there. And so it didn't really feel like Houston was a place that you could become a part of. You lived in Houston. You were not a Houstonian or a Houstonite or whatever the right word is there. And I used to counter that with Austin, because I always felt growing up and in college that Austin had a very clear identity, right? I mean, you could use the slogan, "Keep Austin Weird." Maybe that was the driving identity, but the identity was, work-life balance, fun. Things are hard in life, but it doesn't mean that the weekends have to be hard. It doesn't mean that everything is bad. So I had a lot of fun growing up here. And when I walk around town now, just with how many other companies are here, how kind of tech is coming in and kind of becoming the dominant industry here. Although we are still the state capital, I think people forget that. But we are. This is still the capital
seat of one of the biggest universities in the world. So yeah,
yeah, correct. Yeah, the second wealthiest or third wealthiest university in the world. Like, yeah, that little guy. There's a lot here besides tech. There always has been a lot here besides tech. I think it's one of the things that makes Austin special from an economic recession area. I remember 2008, I was graduating high school. We were getting my mom an iPad or something, and we were at Barton Creek Mall with my dad, I think. And we were waiting in line to spend $1,000 as the world was melting down. And it's like, what recession, right? So there was the rancher in line, the oil guy was in line, and, the education person there. So anyways, I look around now and I don't know that we quite have an identity. I think maybe the identity that we have now is transitioning too much to a, party, drink, kind of thing. I used to always joke with people. People say that Austin's a very athletic town. Everybody's always running and they're in really good shape. And I would counter that, and they would say, no, Austin is a town of eating and drinking. And in order to be a town of eating and drinking, you have to exercise. Otherwise you'll die. Right. So that's why Austin's such a fit town, is because the queso is good. The margaritas are good. Just the barbecue is good. So I think
queso, margaritas, and barbecue, that's really the three food groups of Austin, I think.
It really is. And, it's funny. I tell people too that you can eat tacos for every meal of the day, because breakfast tacos are different from lunch tacos. And those are lunch tacos are vastly different from dinner tacos as well. But so I think Austin's growing. I think the identity is kind of getting a little blurred. I still think that work-life balance piece is still here. I mean, the water hasn't gone away. I heard somebody tell me recently that Austin is the largest city by population now that has active water running through its downtown. And by active, it means that people use it. So, there's water in lots of other major cities, Chicago, but you don't see 300 people on the weekend
paddleboarding on St. Patrick's Day on a green river. Yeah,
that's exactly right. As some crazy, weird things coming out of the water to grab them, from like Loch Ness Monster from one of the lakes. But, so having that water in downtown, that hasn't changed. So you can kind of have that downtown urban feel, but then also have the park, all that there. So I think the challenge for us going forward is we need to maintain the identity that we had before that attracted everybody here in the first place. And we need to realize that you can't have exactly what you had before. People complain, Austin's changing, kick California out, all this stuff. It's too late. You can't do that. Like, if you're really upset about it, sell your house for triple and go move to Bastrop or Llano or somewhere else where the same kind of thing is starting to happen again there. But the Austin of 2000 and the Austin of 1990, they're gone. So it doesn't mean that we can't get some of that same identity back. But I think that's going to be the challenge is if it's just a lot of people coming with a lot of different ideas, and you just got to maintain and not let it turn into a social media town. It's gotta be a town of connections, right? And still face-to-face, work.
Well, and you bring up an interesting thing. Last week, I sat through many conversations with different demographics in the town, and everybody said, we talk a lot about what Austin's identity is, but often we're talking about things that were 10 years ago, just how accessible everybody is and how welcoming everybody is. And I was with a bunch of newcomers, and, I was with, a young woman of color, and they're like, I don't feel I belong. Now they weren't upset about that, but they were saying it's not as welcoming as you think or as people say. And so part of what I think we have to do around this identity is we have to talk the truth, that it is changing. And it is a little harder to get to certain people, and not everybody shows up at events anymore. But that's not necessarily good, bad, or indifferent. We just have to catch up our identity to where we are. And then I think as a tech community, we need to work to figure out where do we want to go in the next decade. And I think we need these civic leaders to come together. And, it's really interesting because you just recently joined the board for the Austin Technology Council. And one of the things that impressed me for a young entrepreneur is you were forward thinking when I first met you about we can't just let it happen. We have to come together and have these conversations. So what caused you to say, yeah, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get on a board of something like ATC?
I think probably the notion of, if you were to, so I fully subscribe to, and maybe this is the engineer in me, that if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. Right. You look at, these amazing achievements that we have in human history, whether it's landing on the moon or the railroad expansions or the internal combustion engine, all of that was ideas turned into physical product. Right. And so I think the same thing, can be applied here. And so if in my brain I'm mapping, well, what are the characteristics of somebody that would be good at taking ideas for Austin and implementing them and manifesting them. And as I was making my list, I realized that I was just checking all the boxes for myself. And so I said, if someone like me is not willing to step up and do this, again, going back to the leadership style, right? I'm very much a lead from the front. Will never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself or haven't done, myself before. And so thinking that somebody new from out of the state, is maybe their a recent resident here, is the best person for it. Maybe not saying that they couldn't help, but if someone with kind of the background that I have is not willing to do it, then what the heck, So I think that's probably what did it for me, was just, I saw the old, I recognize that we're never going to get back to exactly that. And probably we don't want exactly that, because I don't know about you, but man, I love our airport now. It's got so many more routes. We can fly direct to places now.
Lots of places.
So that's cool. The food has changed. And we talked about just tacos and queso and brisket, but I just had some Israeli food over here on the east side. It was really good. So that's growing. But I think I just challenged myself to do it. And that, if there is somebody that can at least try and has a driving motivation behind them, which is, my family is still here. My wife's family is still here. When we have kids, they will be here. So it was important for me to at least get up and try and put in, 100% effort.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it, and the whole community appreciates it. And I need about 7 more of you to come and roll up their sleeves and get involved. So if you're listening, ATC is looking for aggressive entrepreneurs who want to help shape the future.
That's right. So,
there's a lot of things we could unpack. We're running a little long, so I'm going to have you back on for another show. But, I ask everybody as we sort of go off of this, my belief personally is that community, collaboration, and conversations can solve all problems. And I ask everybody who comes on the show, which of those resonates the most with you and why?
I think I'm going to go conversations, because I think having meaningful conversations when you're apart, make the time that you spend together more meaningful. So when you do get together to collaborate and you do start to build that community physically, having had the conversations before, so that the time that you get when you do physically meet up, or when you do start to implement a project or make a change, you've already talked about it for a while, and you've already brought together some of the challenges and the ideas. How the other people in the group are going to think and how they're going to act and respond. So I think you can better capitalize on those relationships in there. Conversations can happen asynchronously. You can be on an airplane and the other person can be, at their home, and you can still be conversing. So I think it really allows flexibility and kind of freedom in there. And so I think if you can have meaningful conversations, now I say this in the age of, super divided news things, and where, a lot of times people can't say things without upsetting somebody, or, all that stuff. But I don't remember who said it, but, in order to, be willing to advance and to think, you have to be willing to offend, right? It's just a natural part of that. And so I think the conversation part is important. If you can address some of the hard things up front and kind of get to common ground through conversation, the collaboration then comes next. And once that collaboration is running smoothly and efficiently, community is a natural byproduct of that. So that's probably where I would go.
Nice. So a new question. I think you're only the 3rd or 4th person I've asked this question of. If someone came to visit you from out of town and they were there for one night, where would you take them in Austin either food or attraction to show them Austin?
Is it hot outside or not?
It doesn't matter. You can give two answers, hot and cold.
Yeah. One of the things that I loved growing up here about Austin, and I still love it to this day, is the music. I subscribe to, we did lose our live music capital designation. The city will never admit that. Sorry, city, but I think it's true.
Yeah, the bands can't afford to live here anymore, so it's a little hard.
There's running out of places to play and all that stuff too. I think I would ask them what kind of music they like, just generally what kind, because that's the one nice thing about Austin is almost given any day of the week, you can go to a blues show, you can go to a country show, you can do the new cool DJ stuff. All that. So I think for me, it would be embracing the music culture here because it's very flexible. And you can kind of make a night out of it too, right? You can start and get some tacos somewhere, go have a beer, listen to the band warm up, talk to the band afterwards. We've met a lot of friends through the music community here. And I think that's what I would do is I would find somewhere to go listen to live music because it's a pretty unique thing about Austin.
Nice. I think that's a great answer. So, James, thanks for being a guest here on the show, and thanks for your new, fresh involvement with the Austin Technology Council.
Tom, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to it all, and I'm here to see Austin succeed, and I think we can do it.
Well, we appreciate you and ALTR's support of ATC and the community we're trying to build here. So, and thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. Hey, is your company a member of the Austin Technology Council? Why not? We would welcome your involvement. We want to have you add your voice to our tech community as we look to build the future. Go join the Austin Technology Council today.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.